In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, May 22nd. The leaders of South Korea, Japan and the US managed to spare some time on the sidelines of the G7 summit to reiterate their intentions to ensure regional security. And US President Joe Biden says ties with Beijing will see a shift, quote, very shortly, even as China takes issue with the latest G7 statement on economic coercion and more. Meanwhile, Seoul's team of officials assigned with the task of assessing Tokyo's plans to discharge Fukushima radioactive wastewater is meeting with relevant authorities in Japan on this Monday. A brief encounter among President Yoon Suk-yeol, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and US President Joe Biden took place on the margins of the G7 meeting on Sunday, during which the three leaders reaffirmed their commitment to deterring threats posed by Pyongyang. Our foreign affairs correspondent Bae Eun-ji reports.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol met with US President Joe Biden and Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in Hiroshima. This is the first time in 6 months that they've met since November last year, when they met on the sidelines of the ASEAN summit in Cambodia. Citing a US official, Reuters reported that during Sunday's talks, Biden invited his South Korean and Japanese counterparts for another meeting in Washington. The spokesperson for Seoul's presidential office, Lee Do-woon, said in a statement that the three leaders decided to strengthen their strategic partnership to bolster deterrence against North Korean threats and to reinforce the rules-based international order. He explained that the three sides agreed to further cooperate on trilateral security cooperation, such as sharing North Korean missile warning information in real time. He added that they also discussed strengthening cooperation on their Indo-Pacific strategies and economic security. In a separate statement, the White House said Biden commended Yoon and Kishida on their courageous work to improve bilateral ties, noting that their trilateral partnership and the Indo-Pacific are stronger because of their efforts. It also said the three leaders discussed ways to take their trilateral cooperation to new heights, including joint collaboration in the face of North Korea's illicit nuclear and missile threats. Sunday's meeting lasted less than 5 minutes as they were on a tight schedule, primarily because of their separate meetings with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who is also in Hiroshima to attend the G7 summit. Last November, the three leaders agreed to share missile warning data to help strengthen missile defense capabilities. Bae Eun-ji, Arirang News.
And here in capital Seoul later on the same Sunday, President Yoon Suk-yeol and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz highlighted the need to seek sustainability for the economy and regional security. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea and Germany have agreed to increase supply chain cooperation in defense and high-tech areas. They're looking to establish a deal to protect military secrets to boost cooperation on defense technologies. President Yoon Suk-yeol and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz held bilateral talks in Seoul on Sunday, following the three-day G7 summit in Hiroshima. Speaking at a joint press conference, the two leaders stressed the importance of building economic resilience, as both economies are highly dependent on exports and are facing systemic changes in global supply chains.
그리고 독일과 우리 대한민국과의 이런 협력은 인태 지역 내에서도 영내 안보 그리고 영내의 어떤 공익적인 그런 아젠다, 뭐 기후라든지 그리고 보건이라든지 이런 거에 대한 협력 분야가 많이 있습니다. 독일이 특히 신재생 그 에너지 기술이 앞서 있고 또 세계 유수의 이런 제약 회사들이 있기 때문에 한국과 협력할 수 있는 분야가 많이 있습니다.
Scholz further raised the need to reduce economic dependency on China, highlighting partnerships with countries like South Korea and Japan.
We will also cooperate with South Korea, especially in the field of electric vehicle and battery production. In particular, we will strengthen cooperation with the Republic of Korea by strengthening our innovation capacity in the semiconductor sector.
Notably, Yoon and Scholz agreed to quickly establish a military secret protection agreement to increase cooperation in the defense industry. South Korea and Germany rank among the world's 8 largest arms exporters as of 2022. Also, as the two governments are both pursuing a carbon-neutral future, Yoon noted that Seoul decided to join the G7's climate club, spearheaded by the German Chancellor. with this year marking the 140th anniversary of Korea-Germany relations and 60 years since Korean guest workers headed to Germany as nurses and miners, Scholz is the first incumbent German leader to visit Seoul since 1993. Noting how Germany had also experienced national division but unified some 33 years ago, Scholz conveyed his sympathy and support for peace on the Korean peninsula and the complete denuclearization of North Korea. Having also discussed the Russian invasion of Ukraine, both leaders expressed their solidarity with Kyiv and pledged continued support for the people of Ukraine.
As countries that have both experienced the plight of division in modern history, President Yoon said the two nations should grow ever closer as they move into the future, building a bridge of solidarity for peace and prosperity across Europe and Asia. Oseong, Arirang News.
Staying in Seoul, President Yoon is scheduled to sit down with his European Union counterparts later on this Monday afternoon. The talks between Yoon and Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and Charles Michel, President of the European Council, will take place at the Yongsan Presidential Office. According to the EU Commission, the agenda covers a vast array of issues ranging from sustainable economic development to broader peace and stability. The meeting will be followed by a joint press conference and an official dinner.
As you know, the Commission has proposed.
Meanwhile, earlier in Hiroshima, speaking to members of the media on Sunday after the G7 summit, U.S. President Joe Biden forecast an improvement in Washington's ties with Beijing in the near future. Our Isingja covers these comments and more.
After the three-day G7 summit in Hiroshima, U.S. President Joe Biden held a press conference on Sunday to discuss key issues discussed with other world leaders in Japan. There, Biden said the group of 7 leaders had agreed to diversify supply chains to reduce dependence on China, stressing that they're not trying to decouple from Beijing. And despite U.S.-China relations being ever so frosty, especially since the diplomatic tensions caused when the U.S. shot down a Chinese balloon that flew over sensitive military sites, the U.S. leader expects relations to thaw very shortly. Still, Biden stressed that the U.S. refuses to trade certain items with China over concerns that such goods can be used to produce nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction. Meanwhile, Biden touched upon the potential use of F-16 fighter jets by Ukraine as G7 leaders agreed to joint allied training programs for Ukrainian pilots. While no discussions on the actual delivery of F-16s were mentioned, Biden said that he had received a flat assurance from Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky that any F-16s received from their Western allies will not be used to go into Russian territory.
I have a flat assurance from Zelensky that they will not use it to go on and move into Russian geographic territory. But wherever Russian troops are within Ukraine in the area, they would be able to do that.
Biden says it's highly unlikely the planes would be used in any Ukrainian offensives in the coming weeks, but added that Ukraine would need such weapons to continue to defend itself from Russia. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is urging for reform of the United Nations Security Council and the global financial system. Speaking at a press conference after the G7 summit, Guterres claimed both frameworks reflect the power dynamics of the past and thus need to be updated to better reflect the current status quo. With regard to the global financial structure, he added it had become outdated, dysfunctional and unfair and had failed to function as a global safety net during the most recent turmoil, including the pandemic, as well as the ongoing war in Ukraine. He further pointed out concerns by the Global South that reportedly believe more should be done to improve dated systems. Over in Japan again, Seoul's delegation of officials assigned with the task of assessing Tokyo's planned discharge of radioactive wastewater is meeting with relevant authorities on this Monday afternoon. According to Seoul's Foreign Ministry, the delegation, led by Nuclear Safety and Security Commission Chairperson Yoo Koo-ki, is meeting with Tokyo Electric Power Company, which runs the plant, as well as Japan's Industry Ministry and the Nuclear Regulation Authority. The meeting on this Monday will be followed by a trip to the damaged nuclear power plant in Fukushima on Tuesday as well as Wednesday, and more talks on Thursday. Japan intends to start releasing its radioactive wastewater into the Pacific Ocean starting this summer. South Korea's exports continue to lose ground this month, putting the country's trade balance thus far this year in the red by $29.5 billion. According to the Korea Customs Service on Monday, the total export value for the first 20 days of May stood at $32.4 billion. Now, this is about 16% lower on year and marks the 7th month in a row during which exports have shown on-year falls. By sector, semiconductor exports saw the biggest decline, plunging by nearly 36% on year, while auto exports posted a surge of over 54%. Total imports also sank by over 15% to just under $37 billion. Also in local news, household gas and electricity bills for the first quarter of this year saw their sharpest surge since the 1998 Asian financial crisis. According to Statistics Korea, the price index for electricity and gas was at around 135, up 30.5% on year. Electricity rose almost 30% to mark an all-time high since relevant data was first compiled in the year 1975. Analysts say this reflects the rise in utility bills last year amid soaring global energy prices. Electricity bills were raised 3 times in April, July and October last year, while household gas prices were raised 4 times. What's more, given last week's additional hike in utility costs, the burden on households is expected to get heavier. In the U.S., efforts to avert a potential default will continue Monday afternoon as President Joe Biden and House Speaker Kevin McCarthy meet for more talks to hammer out a consensus. Our Yoon has more.
On Sunday evening, while flying back from the G7 summit in Japan, U.S. President Joe Biden discussed the current debt ceiling issue with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy over the phone. This was following negotiations last week between senior White House aides and House Republicans that failed to come to an agreement. And during a news conference in Japan, President Biden stated that much of what the Republicans have already proposed is simply unacceptable. McCarthy told reporters that the phone call was productive, but their differences still stand.
What I'm looking at are where our differences are and how could we solve those. And I felt that part was productive. But look, there's no agreement. We're still apart.
President Biden will be meeting with Speaker McCarthy on Monday upon his return to Washington. McCarthy says Republicans backed an increase in the defense budget while cutting overall spending, and that debt ceiling talks have not included discussions about tax cuts passed under the former administration. While President Biden has stressed that he's open to making spending cuts and said he was actually not concerned about the cuts leading to a recession, but he could not agree to the Republicans' current demands. Currently, the Republicans hold a slim majority in the House and the Democrats have narrow control of the Senate, so no deal can pass without bipartisan support. Less than 2 weeks remain until the June 1st deadline U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen reaffirmed on Sunday, when the Treasury Department has warned that the federal government could be unable to pay all its debts. A failure to lift the debt ceiling would trigger a default that would cause chaos in financial markets and spike interest rates. Yoon, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, come Wednesday, Korea's space rocket Nuri will take off for a 3rd time, carrying actual payloads into space. Also, this upcoming launch, that is the first since Hanwha Aerospace secured the bid to lead the government project. Our Shin Se-byuk explains.
South Korea's space industry is reaching new heights. With the upcoming 3rd launch of the Nuri space rocket comes a debut of private entities being involved in space exploration. Hanwha Aerospace secured the technology transfer and project management for Nuri last year. The company will receive vital technologies from the Korea Aerospace Research Institute, enabling it to oversee the next 4 Nuri rocket launches, including this Wednesday's. In addition, Hanwha will invest 50 billion won, or over $37 million by 2025, to establish a rocket assembly facility in Suncheon and core component manufacturing facilities in Goheung, both Jeollanam-do province. Through this technology transfer, Hanwha aims to emerge as a comprehensive solution provider in the space industry.
Our goal is to provide comprehensive space solutions, leveraging our launch service expertise and relationships with our sister companies. This entails building a strong space industry value chain, including satellite manufacturing, space transportation, and exploration.
Bringing the private sector is part of a government scheme to enhance the technological reliability of the Nuri rocket and create a self-sustaining space industrial ecosystem. This was inspired by NASA's technology transfer to SpaceX, which has emerged as one of the world's leading aerospace companies. One expert explains that collaboration between the public and private sectors could lead to incredible innovation, but without soaring costs.
SpaceX's Falcon 9 is capable of deploying a 23-ton payload in a single launch, enabling cost-effective satellite deployment. Moreover, its highly advanced reusable rocket engines further drive cost reduction.
However, the expert expressed doubts about Korea's potential to outperform other countries given its relatively late start in the field.
Nuri is an impressive feat considering South Korea's late entry into space technology. However, looking to the current blueprint, South Korea may face challenges in developing reusable engines in the near future, a technology that has already been mastered by SpaceX. This makes it unlikely for Korea to gain a competitive edge.
In the quest to foster innovative, homegrown space companies, the expert highlights the need for a robust infrastructure capable of overcoming challenges and setbacks. 신세벽, Arirang News.
K-pop girl group 50/50 has hit a new milestone on the global music platform Spotify. The group surpassed 34.3 million monthly listeners last Friday, the highest among female K-pop acts. And the group's listenership grew even further over the weekend to post 34.8 million by Monday. The previous record was set by Blackpink last September with 34.1 million. Monthly listeners are calculated daily based on the number of Spotify listeners to a certain artist over a span of 28 days.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In El Salvador, at least 12 people have been killed and dozens injured in a deadly crowd crush at a football stadium in the capital, San Salvador. The incident took place on Saturday evening local time, right ahead of a Salvadoran quarter-final football league match between Alianza and FAS at the Cuscatlan Stadium. Play was stopped 16 minutes after kickoff, and the match has been postponed. Authorities say fans knocked down the stadium's entrance gate after it was closed ahead of the match starting. They have linked the crowd crush to the overselling of stadium seats and fake tickets to the match. El Salvador President Nayib Bukele has announced a criminal investigation to be carried out by the National Police and the Attorney General's office. In Mexico, at least 10 people have been killed and another 10 wounded during a shooting at an off-road car rally. The incident on Saturday afternoon local time took place near the port city of Ensenada on the last day of a two-day all-terrain car rally. Local officials suggest it may have been a gunfight between rival gangs, citing evidence of cross-shooting found at the scene. The shooting started when multiple gunmen from two vehicles opened fire on the rally's participants and then fled the area. The incident triggered the mobilization of Mexico's Army, Navy, and both state and local police. So far, no arrests have been made. Turning over to Italy, climate activists in the capital city of Rome turned the iconic Trevi Fountain black over the weekend. Protesting government subsidies on fossil fuels on Sunday local time, 7 activists from the Ultima Generazione organization poured diluted charcoal into the water. They linked their protest to the recent deadly floods in the Emilia-Romagna region, where at least 14 people were killed and 36,000 were left homeless. The group also claimed that 1 in 4 houses in Italy is at risk from flooding. The Trevi Fountain is a popular tourist attraction where visitors from around the world toss coins into the water so that they may return to Rome someday. And finally, a guitar played and smashed by late Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain has been auctioned off for just under $600,000. The instrument, a black Fender Stratocaster, was initially estimated to go under the hammer for around $60,000 to $80,000. But it shattered expectations when it was auctioned off on Saturday at the Hard Rock Cafe in New York City as part of the 3-day Music Icons auction hosted by Julian's. Although it's no longer playable, the guitar has been put back together and features signatures by all 3 original members of the band. The guitar was reportedly smashed in the early 1990s while Nirvana was working on their breakout album Nevermind. Cobain took his own life in April 1994. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. We are seeing roller coaster temperatures these days. After a breezy Sunday, upper central regions have early summer warmth again under sunnier skies, while the rest of the country are having cooler air hovering in the low 20s this afternoon with more cloud coverage. Air quality, though, is getting worse due to yellow dust. Dust levels are 2 to 3 times higher than usual, with dust advisories issued in Incheon and Gangwon-do province. And air quality remains bad until Tuesday. Meanwhile, due to atmospheric instability, there could be some passing rain in inland areas. Rain could be followed by thunder and lightning, so have a small umbrella handy just in case. Now, there's a lot going on today weather-wise. Seoul sees a high of 27 degrees, which is 5 degrees higher than yesterday, while Daejeon and Daegu should go up to just 21 degrees. Now, it's going to be warmer than normal this week under mostly sunny skies for the first half of the week. Now, that's Korea for you. Here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends our Monday afternoon newscast. We have our panel session coming up next, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.